So, a little bit more about Dr. Haili Ma, who will be chairing the next panel. Dr. Ma is a associated professor in performance and creative economy, international director at School of Performance and Culture Industries at University of Leeds. Haili's research focuses on intangible cultural heritage in Chinese opera, culture and creative industries in global contexts. So Haili was actually trained as a traditional Chinese traditional Chinese opera from her early teens, and we actually had did a duet together last year, which I hope to do something similar again today. So Haili was a member of the Shanghai Luwan All-Female Yue Opera Company before coming to the UK in 1987, where she pursued her academic career. She is the author of Urban Politics and Culture Capital: The Case of Chinese Opera, and Understanding Cultural and Creative Industries through Chinese Opera. Haili is the principal investigator of the AHRC Newton Grant, Creative Economy, Development in China, Popular Performance for New Urban Audience. And she's also the TI of AHRC Development Grant, UK-China Research Industry Creative Partnership, Bridging the Gaps, Mixed Reality Performance of China Opera in Rural and Urban Shanghai. So today, together with Professor William Latham from Goldsmiths, Professor Zhanyuan Liu from Tongji University, and Zhuang Tasi from the Chief Executive and co-founder of Factory 42, they will be talking about creating shared experiences for multicultural audiences. Over to you, Haili.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sylvia, for the wonderful introduction. It is my great pleasure to chair this session, Creating Shared Experiences for Multicultural Audiences. And my name is Haili Ma from University of Leeds. And with me on the panel, we have the great pleasure to have Professor Liu Zhenyuan from Tongji University, Professor William Latham from Goldsmiths University, also John Casey, the Chief Executive of Factory 42. Perhaps we could ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves a little bit, to capture the essence of what they do in their project and also the core essence of their project. If I could perhaps ask John to start with, your company is one of the most famous one in the UK, but also in China. So if you could tell us a bit more about yourself and the project, please, in 2 minutes.
Sure. Okay. Thanks a lot, Haili. So I run a company called Factory 42. We are an immersive content studio. We do a lot of work with entertainment and cultural organisations, ranging from the likes of Sky and the BBC in the commercial space through to the Tate Natural History Museum and Science Museum in the sort of public sphere. The project that we are currently involved in, which is being led by the very brilliant Professor Steve Benford at Nottingham University, is really about, it's a research and industry creative partnership to connect UK and Chinese museums. Our vision is really about connecting museums, extending their reach, broadening their audiences using digital technologies between visitors, exhibits, sites and interpretations. And it involves the universities of Nottingham and Exeter in the UK, Ningbo, Nottingham's Ningbo campus in China, Shanghai Jiaotong, Hangzhou Normal and Beijing Science. And also we have some support from Alibaba as well. So we're at the early stages of what we're doing, but it's an exciting project.
Thank you so much, John. And if I could also ask William, perhaps to introduce yourself in more detail and your project, please.
Oh, good morning. So I'm William Latham. I'm a professor at Goldsmiths, and I've been producing organic art, some of which was in the background, since the late 80s. And at Goldsmiths, during the past 8 years, we've been taking that technology and pushing it into the VR space, in particular on Vive and Oculus. We've been doing a lot of work in China on the AHRC China grant, which Sylvia is PI, and Johnny Freeman is co-director. And so during the past year and a half, we've had 5 exhibitions in Shanghai of mutative VR art, led by myself and my team. So also I'm involved with scientific visualization. So we take the technology that we've been using to make art to visualize DNA and RNA. And we've been recently doing work on viruses in VR using our engine. So yeah, quite a lot to talk about all the exciting work we've done in China.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And over to yourself, please, Professor Zheng Yuan Liu.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning. I'm Zheng Yuan Liu. From the College of Design and Innovation, Tongji University in Shanghai. I'm an associate professor at the college teaching industrial design. And the project I'm involved in is called Story Futures China. It's the long name is UK-China Transnational Strategic Partnership for Immersive Storytelling in Museums and Cultural Institutions. There are 3 parties, both from each country, involved in this project. For UK side, there are Brunel University London, Royal Holloway University of London, and the National Gallery. For China, we have Tongji University, where I come from, and the Shanghai Science and Technology Museum, and the Shanghai Formos Group. The aim of the project is to develop a UK-China strategic framework to enable the sustained growth of the audience for museums and cultural institutions by the creative use of immersive technologies. And the project mainly focuses on the strategies to grow the audience transnationally, expanding the cultural trade between UK and China. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Zheng Yuan. Okay, I will also introduce myself. Well, my project mainly. Sylvia has done such a wonderful job of introducing me. My project, I'm leading on, like Sylvia said, 2 so far HRC projects. And one is the Newton Fund development in M50, the creative economy. Myself is the UK PI, and Professor Huang Changyou. I have the great honor to have him as the China PI together with our CR at X University. And currently, the project I'm leading is Bridging the Gaps, which examines migrant culture and their art forms in Shanghai all-female Yue opera, and how that rural-urban relationship can be understood by both the urban Chinese audience as well as international audience, as distinctive Chinese popular culture, and how that links with the working class way of life and exemplifies in China from made in China to created in China, the transitional period, moving to new fashion and technology, and how in the process of doing that we could bring the UK digital companies, SMEs, as well as art institutions and theatre art institutions such as museum, to develop a creative chain and cluster to work with China. So this is my project. And okay, we have a few, well, about 30 minutes maximum to talk through the process of shared experience for multicultural audiences. So there are some questions perhaps we could share amongst our panelists and panel members. Perhaps we could start at the starting point from China. So perhaps the question would first directed to Zheng Yuan, if I may, about Chinese cultural production and audience consumption patterns, styles. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about that before we gradually move to UK China and how we can develop more in-depth collaboration. Is that okay, Zheng Yuan? So Chinese cultural production, audience consumption patterns and styles, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hallie. I think I will mainly share my experience in the project I'm in that I have just introduced. So in that project, the cultural institution in Shanghai is Shanghai Museum of Science and Technology. And in terms of audience insight, that we found that it is very much, children centered or oriented, because you may know that in China family has a very kind of plays a very big role, a very big concept, and children is always they are the center of the family. And for the science museum in Shanghai, that they have mainly two types of audience. One is like individual, or we can say like like by families mostly. The other one is from school or institutional visit. So both of the two kinds that involves a lot of young age children. And we also have a saying that 遛娃, which means to take the baby or child for a walk. So in Shanghai, the museum somehow plays a big role in terms of 遛娃 space. And so I think from this perspective, entertainment and also together with educational purpose.
Are we losing Zhenyuan? Hello, Zhenyuan, can you hear me? Okay, whilst we're waiting for Zhenyuan to be reconnected with us, I think Zhenyuan has started off a great, oh, sorry, Zhenyuan, you're back, great. We temporarily lost you. Please do go on about 遛娃.
Okay, so I think from the perspective like that, both entertainment and educational purpose plays a big role in terms of cultural production in such institutions. So yes, that's basically what I said. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Zhenyuan. Whilst you were talking about 遛娃, another terminology popped into my mind, and that is 宝妈. I'm sure the Chinese have heard of. So yes, so 遛娃, if you haven't explained the word, the meaning of the words, means to take the baby children stroll along the cultural kind of events. And whereas 宝妈 literally means pet mother, the young urban mother, putting quite a lot of emphasis on educating the next generation, their own children. So 宝妈 and 遛娃, I think, emphasize the key summary of Chinese cultural audience, and that in Zhenyuan's words, and perhaps it's very much urban focused, middle class, amongst middle class, right middle class. And I would emphasize and also the rural urban differences and the kind of unbalanced culture consumption. But it's a great starting point. On that note, perhaps we could also ask other panelists to contribute on the cultural Chinese and your understanding of Chinese and cultural audience and their consumption patterns. Anything would be fine. We would love to hear the views from the English panelists. Could we start with, could I ask John, please?
Sure, no, I'd be happy. I mean, one of the things that really struck us as a group of partners when we had our first workshop in Shanghai with our different partners was when the different Shanghai museums that Shanghai is an extraordinary city. It's got, I think it's the third most populous city in the world. It's roughly got a third of the number of people that are in the entire UK, and they've got some extraordinary museums and galleries. They also host things like Team Lab, which is this incredible collective of artists who do very much sort of projection-based work. And Team Lab's installation in Tokyo, I think it is, has become the single most visited single artist destination in the world, and it's all around projection mapping. And Shanghai has kind of captured this spirit and taken it forward. So it's a brilliant city to go and kind of learn and stimulate and sort of advance your own creative thinking and practice as well.
Thank you very much, John. I think we kind of so far have emphasized the importance of digital technology, middle class and urban audience. And perhaps, William, I know you're the expert in digital technology. What concerns the Chinese government is certainly the urban-rural population, but also the use of mobile phone to engage their younger audience, children from wider regions. And what do you think technology might bring opportunities to the wider audience in China?
Okay, I'll try and answer that. Just picking up first of all on John's point, I absolutely agree. The family audience is absolutely key. So when we're showing Mutator VR, children can try it, adults can try it. So it has a very broad appeal. And so we showed the VR experience in the Lilac shopping mall in an exhibition that we put on there. So it was families, it was like continuous traffic of people coming to see the VR art. And then we also did another show at the Musée Monard. And again, when we were setting up the exhibition, we had to design it so that children could use it as well as VR. So in effect, the headset had to be low enough to the ground to make sure a 4-year-old child could try it. So yeah, definitely that family audience is, I think, is really important from our experience. Yeah, every exhibition, making sure that it has that broad appeal. Thankfully with Mutator, it's pretty organic. There's no narrative, it's pretty accessible. So your question, Hallie, was about bringing technology to a wider audience. Is that?
Yeah, you have answered it beautifully. Yes, and definitely it is about the children, next generation, the wider family-oriented audience and consumers, and definitely.
Yeah, I think also presenting technology in an exciting and interesting way, I think is the key.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's great. Now that I think what we have talked about and give us the starting point for a much richer and UK-China kind of transnational focused debate. And so I'd like to move on to the next phase of questions, perhaps on the process for audience, the process for audience development through documentation, immersive theatre participatory theatre performance. And I think John, you have tremendous experience in that through Factory 42. So perhaps you could share with us some experience and you have earned in this country, but also your vision on how that can be transferred to China on audience development, please.
Sure. Okay. Well, so we, as a company, we work across, as I say, lots of different cultural organizations, and that stems back to there's a small nucleus of us in the company who were involved in the founding of the Sky Arts channels, which are TV channels in the UK dedicated to the arts that went on to deliver audience to lots and lots of different people. And we're very much about trying to take an audience first perspective and ensuring that that you understand what the needs of that audience are, what they want, and how to deliver the best possible experience to them. So ensuring that you're constantly testing what you're making is really important. We're currently in production on a big project which involves reimagining what a visit to a major museum, including the Natural History Museum and Science Museum, might be. So using new technology, using narrative and creating experiences that have a sort of thematic science theme underneath them, but are genuinely driven by entertainment. And we've done a lot of work around that. We've done a lot of testing with audiences. We try and work in an agile way to ensure that you're constantly reflecting those audience needs. I think it's fair to say that there is no guarantee that that approach works in China. I think it's probably for us too early to say whether that works. And why I say it's too early is because the plan that we had for this year of our project in China had obviously been pretty significantly disrupted by COVID. I think we were due to be in China 4 times by now in 2020, and we've not been once because of COVID. So, but that said, when we have had workshops in China, we had one particularly successful workshop where we used a process called the visitor box, which was basically a sort of creative process that has the audience at the center of it, that is being created by the University of Nottingham. And it was our first exercise in collaborating with our Chinese partner. You know, we didn't know them. The Brits had virtually no language in terms of Chinese language. The Chinese were far better at speaking English than we were at Chinese. And actually it worked out really well, and it gave us all a sort of a process to gather around. So that is something that worked well, but in terms of the next phases, COVID has slightly delayed where we'd wanted to be by now.
Thank you very much, John. I think you have picked up some quite important challenges or key issues, perhaps we could expand a little bit in this session, such as I think content development and how to engage an audience in China with the UK. Digital technology, you mentioned the keyword, magic words, Chinese language, as well as the culture. For any audience development, and usually speaking with the Chinese, theatre companies, and they all have their targeted audience group, and very much content based. Digital technology plays a certain part, but to a certain extent. So perhaps you could expand, if you could think about it. I'll ask
okay.
To contribute on this topic. You have been to China, you have hosted various events, and what do you think of the challenge on content development as well as digital technology development in order to expand or connect the audience between UK and China?
Okay, so it's always an interesting question of how you test a VR experience or an art exhibition for an audience before you present it, and often there's not much time. Quite often we'll use the exhibition as a live way of testing whether the audience do like it, and we'll make adjustments to the software pretty quickly as people use it. I think one of the key things is timing. If you've got a VR experience in an exhibition context, people will spend between 3 and 5 minutes in VR, so you've got to customize that experience to make sure it's good right from the start. So I think we have refined our experiences based on the exhibitions we did in China. One of the good things about China is if you're setting up an exhibition, the technical teams are always excellent, and so you can, if necessary, make late adjustments to the software if you really need to, because you're confident then that the software will be installed, tested quickly, and implemented. I guess for our recent work, we showed it at the Pompidou Center in Paris before, tested it on a French audience. They seemed to like it. We introduced force fields into the VR experience, so we were fairly confident that it would work in a Shanghai audience. There's no translation or anything like that necessary. So yeah, quite often, I was in games development for 10 years. So actually quite often when you're finalizing a VR experience, it's more like completing a game. You're debugging it, you're run user testing sessions.
Yeah, That is great, William. That really, I think, emphasizes the importance of technology, digital collaboration. China is evolving really fast in that area. There's a huge potential for UK-China collaboration in digital technology. But if I could bring both of you back to the core issue, lots of people would be interested in the content and possibility and challenges of collaboration development. And we talked about language, and perhaps what I would also emphasize here with Chinese audience in mind is the Chinese government ambition, as well as the middle class desire to have their own identity on the global market. And so not only through digital consumption, but also production, digital wise, but to emphasize the Chinese cultural identity. Certainly for Xi Jinping, he has emphasized since 2014 to the present day, Chinese creative industry is anchored in traditional Chinese culture, such as the art and the painting, the opera. So on that emphasis, what is your response to the opportunities as well as challenges in content development, please? John.
So it's a really good question. And I think the answer is that none of this is straightforward. I think that when you do any form of co-production, it means that you've got multiple voices at the table. So whether it's a co-production with a UK company that you know really well and you both understand the audience, because of the nature of a creative process, there's always going to be subjectivity. So there are no guarantees you are going to agree. If you take that and transfer that to China, the challenges become even greater because you've got significant cultural differences, you've got time differences, you've got very different ways of communicating. You know, in the UK, a lot of communication is done on email. In China, WeChat is often the sort of the dominant form of connecting. And also that there are the very sort of significant cultural differences around traditions of the work. So, but that said, if that doesn't mean there aren't really good opportunities. So an interesting fact is that the single most attended Tate exhibition ever was an exhibition on Turner's landscape. So Turner being a very well-known British artist, it took place in Shanghai. So it was British landscapes in Shanghai, hugely popular. And so one of the themes we're looking to explore is, you know, the traditions in landscape painting that exist both in the UK and China, two very, very different approaches, but already Turner has shown the connections between the audiences. And so it's how can we connect those? We'd also like to bring climate change into the conversation, but you know, climate change in certain areas is quite a political subject, and so we're trying to navigate that. So there's a lot of things I think you need to be sensitive to, and trying to work through those sensitivities, in our experience, generally works best when you're in a room with a person, able to, you know, have that face-to-face contact. And so trying to do it on Zoom or whatever during a pandemic makes it harder, but it's not impossible. So I think what I'm saying is there's co-producing with China in a global pandemic is quite a challenge. There's a way through it, but it's not straightforward.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. I think that's a very good point. And certainly the clash, the misunderstandings through translation, through the modern history, historical development, and is massive. And a classic example perhaps is our project, Chinese opera. As soon as you hear this opera word amongst the UK audience, it's quite a turn-off thing. Whereas for the Chinese audience, it's popular culture, it's intimately linked with migrant culture, as well as the working class culture. I think from our project's point of view is trying to bridge the gap of mistranslation, misconception in key words and how theatre is produced, and before the technology comes in, which would massively enhance it. And so on that topic, if I could perhaps bring us to the next phase of the question, and that is very much moving from China to potential challenges and to UK-China audience behavior and preference in digital production and distribution, and in particular IP. William, if you could perhaps, if I could put you on the spotlight, because you're such an expert in digital technology, if you could talk just a bit about IP issues and around UK-China audience behavior and preference in production, that would be wonderful, please.
Okay, so the way we're working at the moment is kind of classic export scenario. We have a brand, we have the technology, and we're deploying that in China and doing lots of exhibitions. How one extends that is the question. So if you look at Marshmallow, Laser Feast, or Team Lab, they are kind of collectives. And so maybe the Mutator brand will be expanded into a collective which would have members in China. And that's already sort of starting to happen in that I'm a visiting professor at Jiao Tong University, and they're wanting their PhD and postdoc teams to work with me on projects, to collaborate with me on projects. So already in the UK with my ex-students from Goldsmiths, they're part of my team. So actually, it could well be that the Mutator brand starts to form a collective, and then there are Chinese members who are members of that collective. The challenge is quality control. So the moment I try quite rigorous quality control as you have a collective, that quality control becomes a little bit harder. I don't know how Marshmallow, Laser Feast do their quality control, but so that I think that's one of the challenges of expanding. But I, definitely academically, one can find some really good talent, and I think so. What we're looking at in China is producing these images huge. We're already rendering these images out at 30,000 pixels plus horizontal, and we're looking at fashion brands and things of that sort. So there's lots of interesting, exciting collaborations that are emerging. So I can see that, how that collaboration can work on the China side, how that is then brought back to the UK. I haven't worked that bit out yet.
That's great. Thank you so much, William. That really set the tone about the challenges as well as the huge opportunities for the digital technology collaboration. On that note, John, perhaps let's just focus a little bit on theatre. Certainly for my project, we have both the Shanghai Dramatic Arts Center as well as Shanghai All-Female Yue Opera House as our partners. One of the amazing things is these two companies, massive companies, has never collaborated officially. One focus on drama, spoken drama, or 话剧. The other focus on the so-called conventional Chinese and traditional Chinese opera. And yet both of them very much developing immersive technology, immersive performance, whatever that means, but engage the audience and use the digital technology. So what I'm trying to say is perhaps UK-China audience, we're all facing this kind of challenge because technology as well as the new way of immersive technology performance in theatre is quite new. For your company, what is your experience of engaging different strands of audiences and the opportunity and challenges between UK and China, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think so if I could split my answer into two sections. So in terms of the challenge of getting different practitioners to work together, so I think that is really, really an interesting theme, and certainly for our Dinosaurs and Robots project, where we're bringing the worlds of theatre, games, architecture, visual effects together. It shows that if you are trying to move across genres, let alone across culture, it can be really challenging. And again, it's so much of it is about communication. So if you take the word development to a software engineer means basically creating code. Development to somebody in a theatre company means raising money for a building. Development for someone in a museum is often around education. Development, you know, can be around fundraising. And so you have to sort of, you know, even amongst the UK side, be clear what your language is and how you're working together before you then try and participate and collaborate internationally. So I think there is that big challenge there. I think it's having the time to be really clear, being open, trying to build that trust, trying to sort of be really sensitive to the different cultural needs, learning. I mean, we're you know, to be honest, I mean, I think we feel, a lot of us on the project, I mean, some people have got a lot of experience of collaborating between the UK and China, and others of us, in which would completely include myself, feel like real novices, and we're just learning, making mistakes every day. But I think as long as you're clear about the limits of your knowledge at the time, and that you're trying to build something that works for both cultures, we're making progress, albeit COVID has made it slower than we'd hoped.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think we're all, not just in the UK side learning Chinese, but the Chinese and learning the Chinese and practice. And as I said before, the Shanghai Dramatic Arts Center, Shanghai Opera House, and we're trying to collaborate. And I think somebody from Opera North commented, if we could make them to working, then our project Bridging the Gaps has succeeded. And that's even before we can move in between UK and China. So yes, we're all trying to explore on that topic. And William, if we could move to our kind of final question, but most important one, and that will be on immersive technology and cultural institutions to work together in order to promote a scalable kind of collaboration. Certainly for our project, Bridging the Gaps, and our ambition is to bring in SMEs as well as cultural institutions, theatre, museum, to enter China as a cluster so that they could support each other. As we all know, SMEs are the funding kind of base of digital technology, digital economy. But without a sound support, the scalable step perhaps is quite far beyond the reach. So on that scalable possibilities, what is your view, please, William?
Okay, gosh, big topic. I think the key thing is there's this division between, you know, art galleries, cultural institutions, and mass market interactive entertainment, VR included. And I think both operate in different ways. So I am working on a project which is pretty mainstream, which is music based at the moment. And that's definitely not on the art gallery side of things, it's on the mass market side of things. So I guess any project you have to work out where it sits, whether it's for kind of an arty crowd or a gamesy crowd. And I think that influences strongly how you approach that project. And very easy to get that wrong at times. I've got it several times wrong in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you know, ideas about shared VR spaces that can be accessed from China and the UK at the same time, networks are just still too ambitious. We've done a lot of work.
William, sorry, I have to cut you short because the time is nearly up. I just want to leave a few seconds for John. Yeah. John, what's your view on scalable possibilities?
Well, I think, very briefly, talking about scaling immersive technology at the minute is hard because it requires specialist equipment that's expensive. It often requires putting on headsets, which at the moment, COVID doesn't make that a particularly good thing to share headsets with other people. So I think, you know, using mobile devices with things like augmented reality is one of the best routes at the minute. But it feels like it's a longer term thing. It's going to take a while to come through. All the trends are very, very positive. It offers tremendous opportunities to cultural organizations, but nobody should be under the illusions that it is anything but quite challenging, quite expensive, and takes time at this moment. But there is a future in it.
Yeah. That's well said, and I feel after chairing this panel, working with wonderful companies and heads like you, all of you, really provides the base and the opportunity for us to really scale up the next stage and to link up UK-China creative industries. Thank you very much, everyone. And if I could hand over to Sylvia, thank you. Oh, may I also remind everybody, we do have question and answer session, and we look forward to hear and to see many of you. Thank you.